Hi, I'm Kevin Tetra with the Canadian GovTech community.
I'm Mitch with the Canadian GovTech community as well, and welcome to the first live event all about digital twinning. And first off, I'd like to say thank you to our sponsors, Simon Fraser University, Edelman Global Advisory, C-SPAN, and our sponsors, Cognitive Spark and SSI.
We got a great show today, don't we, Mitch?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to learning more about digital twinning. I didn't know digital twinning was really a thing until about a month ago. So I'm hoping that the experts that we're going to have on the panels today are going to shed some light on what digital twinning is, how it's different from VR, augmented reality, and mixed reality, which I also learned today was a thing. And helping us to, along with this learning process is a real expert in the realm, which is fantastic. So we will have him asking the right questions, and for our panelists, it's Greg Gulanian from SSI. Greg, welcome to the show.
Yeah, hi Mitch, hi Kevin. I just wanted to say first off, thanks so much for organizing this event. Being a part of the shipbuilding technology community, one of the things I've noticed is that these topics, they're buzzwords, and that's part of the problem. We don't always know what we're talking about. We don't know if we're talking about the same things. Everyone knows at a high level what AR, VR, IoT, digital twin are. But for it to be part of our future, part of the industry's future, we need to have that common understanding and set the goalposts appropriately so we can actually achieve something. That's why I'm so excited about this event, because we're bringing together leaders from academia, government, technology, industry, to establish that common understanding and actually mark a path forward, both for the Canadian technology industry and beyond.
And Greg, it was funny because at DevSec this year, I was really surprised by the scale and scope of the Canadian industry. I didn't realize that there were this many companies involved and that it was such a huge sector. It was Canada is a kind of a leading region in the world in this area, right? So before we kind of dive into it, perhaps you can give a little bit of background on yourself and your role in the space.
Yeah, so I work with the company called SSI. We develop, I would say, more broadly, engineering and information management solutions for the shipbuilding industry. But we're also really focused on developing digital twin, AR, VR for the shipbuilding industry and seeing how shipbuilders can apply it. So it's been truly exciting working with a company with 30 years of experience at the cutting edge of this and being absorbed in hundreds of years of collective knowledge. So yeah, it's been certainly an exciting ride the past few years I've been with SSI.
Absolutely. So why don't we dive right into it, Greg? So Mitch and I are going to disappear here. We're going to hand it off to you as the moderator, and let's get the show on the road.
Great. Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, guys. So to kick things off today and to set the stage for the rest of the event, specifically to define what digital twinning is and its relationship to virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, all the realities you can have. We have with us the director of Simon Fraser University's VISE Labs, Wolfgang Stuerzlinger, who's been working with SFU since 2014. So hi, Wolfgang. Welcome to the show. For those who don't know, the research ongoing at VISE Labs focuses on human-computer interactions, user interfaces for 3D, virtual reality, visual analytics, and things like that. So Wolfgang, what is digital twinning, if you can summarize it in the short time you have, and what are you up to at the VISE Labs these days?
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for inviting me to speak here. I'm going to share my screen. Just if you give me 1 second. So I'll be talking about digital twinning. And so what is it in a nutshell? It is a merger of digital models, the real physical plants, and making the connection in between. Now, there's many different connections that we can make, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But the concept of digital twinning is not that new. There is the David Galerntner's book, Mirror Worlds in 1991, which kind of introduced this concept. And then Michael Greaves in 2002 at the University of Michigan, who presented this as part of product lifecycle management. So that's already 20 years old right there. And featured also very prominently in the NASA roadmap in 2010. So the digital twinning is not something that's new, right? That concept has been around. And as you can see in the image here, you have we can go from a digital model, say when we design a plant, to a real instantiation of the model, and then instrument that with Internet of Things, the various sensors, and actually sense what the current real plant is doing, and sense what it is, have a digital model that basically replicates the real one, and then do some analytics on it. For example, do some performance optimization. And there's various other ways you can use these things, and I will be talking about some of them. So one example here, and this is a bit of an older example, but it's still a very good example, is that a company in the Nordic countries used a digital twin of an oil platform to actually manage the operations of it, because they can not only during the design process, but also because it is a remote operation, right? It helps them have fewer people on site. They can look through the sensors what is happening on the platform. Now, the oil and gas industry is by far not the only place where digital twinning is prevalent these days. In manufacturing, in the automobile sector, aerospace sector, healthcare, medical digital twins, basically medical replications of the human system, the human body. Wind farms are a very prominent example, right? Marine, retail, oil and gas, infrastructure, traffic simulations, all kinds of areas where digital twins today play a role. Now you may ask, what is it really good for? Well, digital twins actually span the lifetime of a real system, right? So in the planning stages, we can plan, design, and engineer a system. And that's, computer design, and that's something that's fairly commonly used today. However, today, we also talk about digital twins being used, say, in procurement to verify that before something is even built, it may satisfy the needs. So, for example, for the wind farm that I mentioned earlier, right? They actually, before they built the wind farm, they actually ran simulations, not the company, but other people ran simulations to actually check if that wind farm would satisfy the needs and the predicted outcomes, right? While a plant while a physical construct is operational, we can use a digital twin to operate it and to maintain it. And I'll be talking a little bit about that, especially for maintenance. You can look at how failures occur, what failures may affect beyond the failure itself, but because you can use the digital twin to actually simulate what happens when this component fails, what other things might get affected. One important thing is, and especially for larger plants and various other things, when you have to modify something, like say you have to upgrade a plant, you can use the digital twin to plan the modifications, to plan the modernizations, to simulate how well that might work. Will that actually achieve the objectives that we are targeting, and all of these questions. And then towards the end of life, we talk about things like planning the deconstruction of a plant, right? So for example, how much steel is in there? And what do we do with it? And which operation, in which sequence do we want to disassemble this, and so on? How do we recycle the whole thing? All of these questions can, to some degree, be answered through a digital twin. Now, I'm not going to lie. Digital twins cost money, okay? Because you need to create this digital model. You need the skills to actually create that digital model and to maintain it, right? A digital twin is really, it has its best use when it's not just at the beginning, but keeps being updated as things go along, right? So we often talk about things like as designed and as built and as maintained, right? That the model actually reflects what the current state of reality is. The benefits are fairly clear too. Today, looking broadly across industries in here, you see in the life cycle of a product cost reductions in the order of 10 to 30%, right? So this is substantial. I mean, even if you spend 2% on the digital twin itself, you clearly have a payoff there, right? Some not so obvious benefits are that I might want to highlight here are things like that digital twins actually facilitate collaboration, because you can basically say, well, here is a digital version of, say, my power plant, and we can now do some investigation if we, for example, we can actually fit a third stack in here, or we can, what happens when we rearrange these parts of the plant? Can we do that? Do we have enough space? How does that actually affect the operational performance, right? A lot of people think about digital twins just thinking about space, but you can actually predict the performance of things because you can run some simulations, right? And that's a very powerful thing in digital twinning. Another thing that has also proven its worth is that, and I will use the oil platform here again as an example for this one, is that when something is remote, we can use the digital twin to predict things, such as which tools might we need for repairs. And if you look, I mean, using space again as a thing, is you look at the digital model and you go like, wait a minute, yeah, we have that big saw we could use to cut this part out, but it actually doesn't fit in there. So we'll have to plan something else. Before you send a ship there with the big saw and the ship arrives there and you discover, well, that doesn't work. And then you have the ship comes back and you have to, the timelines just get longer and longer, right? So here's some real world cases. In the top left, you have a system where they basically have some turbines and they're planning to put another turbine in. And so some of the interesting things that happen in this, beyond the obvious things here that can happen in this space is that they planned to upgrade that set of turbines to put another turbine in. Great. And then they actually put the digital model in, and they discovered that there would be a lot more upgrades needed than they thought, because the sensors that are in the turbines, the hub that connected them, they actually were over capacity. So they actually discovered that they had to upgrade the whole network infrastructure. And so that actually changed the balance on would this upgrade actually be beneficial or not, right? Again, using the oil platform here, because through the Internet of Things sensors, you can get data about how something is performing, right? You can see that, for example, these are some of the pipe structure out of that oil platform, right? There's the blue is water. So you can ask now the question, why is there blue in this column? Why is there water in this column? There shouldn't be water in this column. It should be one column over and so on. So you can diagnose problems, even remotely. And in a way that not just, there's a problem, but also talk about, okay, can we now think about rerouting something through a different set of pipes to actually solve the problem, right? So you can not just diagnose problems, but also think about how you constructively deal with it. Now, digital twins also allow things like to predict how long something might take to fail. The idea of the dip curve for going from the design installation to the potential failure to a failure. And there are some, for quite a large class of artifacts, you can basically have indications that something, for example, minuscule vibrations can be basically an indicator that this part is more and more failing. And if you have the sensors, you can basically watch a piece of equipment basically predictively, well, okay, this is now the vibrations are getting stronger, and you can basically estimate how long it might take to fail. And so now what you can do is use the instrumented real artifact and plan when it might fail, and then plan repairs and maintenance according to what's happening, and not just, well, okay, we will have to do maintenance every 3 years. Right? So you can do the maintenance not based on a schedule, but you can do the maintenance based on real data. Speaking about maintenance, and this gets now closer to what virtual and augmented reality, which is part of what I do research in, is clearly you can also use digital twinning for maintenance, right? So for example, that you use here in this case, an augmented reality system where you actually annotate, say this component is failing, or there's something going wrong with it. And so now we can look at what's happening. I've been collaborating with Boeing, and they say this is a huge thing for them because, you know, under the skin of an aircraft, there's a lot of things. And so when you have damage on the skin of an aircraft, you actually don't necessarily always know what's behind it, because while they have a digital model for one Boeing 777, every Boeing 777 is subtly different, right? And they actually, one of the issues is, you know, if there's damage to the hull, not every component is exactly in the same place everywhere. And so they go like, well, this model might have a critical component. And so we might have to do a very different repair than for something else. Now, speaking about virtual and augmented reality, and as Kevin already asked the question, so what's the relationship between digital twins and virtual and augmented reality? Well, the relationship is very simple. There's lots of uses. Virtual and augmented reality is a technical field, and we're basically proposing to use these technologies to immerse people in a different virtual space. That has many uses. I will just use the game market and the metaverse as two clear different visions that in those spaces, and that's actually where a lot of this technology comes from. But I will say that virtual and augmented reality are perfect match for what digital twinning offers, because the digital models that are used in digital twins allow you to see, and that's very powerful for us humans, allow you to see something that's not there. So in this case, I'm using here images from Varjo. Varjo is a company that makes virtual and augmented reality helmets that are vastly better than what you can get today for the consumer market. They're also a little pricey, I'll say that. But their resolution is at the level where you can read text and information and see detail much better than what you can today in a virtual reality, consumer level virtual reality device. So that brings me to my own research. In the VISE lab, we are doing research on various areas listed as here, and you can actually see the acronym spelled out here. I won't spend the time to do that, just to make sure that we stay on time here. So I'll show you some movies of what we're doing. So for example, this is here a collaboration with the NRC, the National Research Council of Canada, and we're looking at turbine maintenance of aircraft turbines. Right? And so in this, one of the issues that we ran into when we talked about this was, how do we select? How do we actually interact with this digital model? And it's a very, there's things inside things. So you have the issue that you have to basically deal with the insides of things, right? And it's not as if we can turn on X-ray vision. That's not very useful. And I've done some research on that, but so that's not directly very useful. But how do you actually select something inside other things? Right. Another application for this technology is the human body, right, where you have things inside things, right? And so here we're developing multiple techniques to try to basically make it easy for the user to select a target part that's somewhere inside and not obvious from the outside. Now, a lot of people think that you can just fly in there and look at it. I know that, but the issue with that issue is, when you fly in there, you may be basically somewhere where there's lots of other things right in front of you, and that doesn't make it useful. So what we're trying to do here is to come up with new ways to actually look at things that are inside. Oops, the audio shouldn't have been on here. Anyways, we just filmed this yesterday just to make it more clear. One of the other projects is to actually interact with high precision interaction in virtual reality. So now this is somebody in a virtual reality headset interacting with their cell phone on the arm so that they can have interaction like on a desktop. Now ignore the audio here. What we're targeting here is the highly complex menus that you'd have in a computer-aided design system or in some real system, right? PowerPoint or Word. One of the issues you run into is there are so many things you can do that, Right now, it's actually very difficult to map that into virtual and augmented reality. So what we're doing here is trying to come up with new solutions, better solutions to afford people to actually interact with very challenging systems that offer many, many different options. On following up now on more on the data analytics side of digital twinning, here is a demonstration, a very simple demonstration, and I apologize for the camera work, but this is filmed basically from a head mount display, where we are looking at how we can present data in a virtual environment. And you can actually imagine here, and we could not get the video clip running to work for this, but you can imagine that you have data now around, say, that aircraft engine model, okay? And where we can grab dimensions, say, like compare weight and horsepower. And I've already talked with my students about the spelling mistakes in there, but that's just an unfortunate artifact. And basically quickly show the data, which is important if you want to look at diagnosing problems, say, why is that turbine not performing as well as it should? And we're talking here about a digital model of a turbine, but the data comes from a real turbine, right? And so in this case, we are trying to make a system that makes it very easy for the user to, say, compare different dimensions, different quantities, right? In this case, it's a car data set with horsepower and weight, right? And the colors, and just in case you're wondering here, is the different Japanese cars versus European cars versus US cars, right? And so here we're making it very easy for the user to quickly put something together, look at the data, what is happening, what potential insights we can draw. We actually have this system running in a 2D version as well, where we have a large collaborative screen, and you can do this in virtual reality too. And one of the interesting things that was observed is that when you do that, you can suddenly do things like have people collaborate about the data, and people will start talking about the data and ignore the system, right? And that's a very powerful thing to have people actually actively engage in the data. Oops. Another thing, another project that we've done is to look at maintenance of aircraft here in this case. And we actually, this is pictures of the system that I participated in building. And so this is basically a system that allows you to use a tablet, like your average iPad or something like that, to actually look at the aircraft and basically use the tablet to annotate. Well, here there might be a problem or something like this, and then look up in the database which, say, component is underneath, right? So one of the issues turns out that tracking in the around an aircraft where that tablet is actually a very challenging issue. So in the bottom right image, you see that the digital model is overlaid over the real one, and you can see the two don't quite match. And so what we've done here is to adapt the method that's shown on the left here, where we can actually quickly move around an object, not in the sense of around a sphere. We've adapted that to the domain of an aircraft. And so in this case, we're now using a tablet here where we basically move the viewer alongside the aircraft while maintaining a reasonable distance to the aircraft, right? An aircraft is actually quite interesting because it has these wings, right? So if you stay always at the same distance to the body, you end up flying through the wings, which is very useless for an end user. So this method makes it easier to more robust for the user to navigate in the virtual model to match the real one. Last but not least, and this is a collaboration together with Purdue, we are looking at authoring of training videos. So now we are using digital models, in this case, a bike repair, where we actually author videos that demonstrate people how to train. And so we instrument, say here, the wrench and the bicycle here so that we can actually do that. It turns out that authoring such videos is extremely time consuming and it needs lots of work. This system is targeted at somebody who doesn't know much about video editing and all of this, and to actually quickly generate, and they're subject matter artists, so they know how to, say, do a bicycle repair here, right? And how to make it easier for them. And so we have created a system.
Successful completion of the editing operation, the user can view the 2D video rendering of their creation.
So what you see here is actually recorded footage from the real world, right? Being played back in a virtual model to demonstrate how to do something, right? And now this is, of course, an example task, but we found this very beneficial and compared very well with other alternatives. So, yeah. So I'd like to finish off with thanking my funding sources on the right and the various people who have participated in this. And I'll stop here to make sure that we stay roughly on time.
Yeah, thanks so much, Wolfgang. We have a couple great questions here, and we only have a few minutes, so I want to make sure we get to at least some of these. Jason asked, so what makes up the cost reductions? Where do you see these reductions in rework because of the digital twin?
Great question. Thank you. So the cost reductions come from avoiding things that, I mean, there's multiple sources, right? I mean, one of them is, as I mentioned, you can actually do maintenance as needed and not as planned, right? So that's one, because that often ends up reducing some of the maintenance, lengthening the maintenance intervals, because the part's actually performing well, right? But also allows you to predict failures. So you get into fewer situations where the whole plant has to shut down, or a large part of the plant has to shut down because one component is failing, because you predict earlier, you can see earlier that something would fail, right? And so you can say, well, okay, we have to shut down now for a week to do the maintenance, or we have the failure, which typically has an accumulative effect. And then it takes, you fail unpredictably and you have to shut down for 3 months. And that's a big saving right there, right? You can also plan better, right? Say upgrades or something like this, right? And you can also troubleshoot even in running a plant, right? Because you have these sensors that tell you what the plant is doing. And I'm just using the plant as an example, right? And that actually allows you to be much more proactive and thus avoid big consequences, right? Sorry, which are very costly, right? Greg?
Yeah, thank you. I think we have time for maybe one more question before we head into the next session. What kind of organizations are you working with? What types of industries and organizations are interested in these technologies right now?
So as I mentioned, I'm working with Boeing in the airline industry. There's clear interest in digital twinning right there. I'm also quite aware that there's a lot of interest in the sea shipbuilding industry, right? I mean, there's lots of the Holoship initiative is one, C-SPAN is one example, right? But there's plenty of industries who are basically looking at this to actually improve their processes, right? In general, right?
Yeah, thanks so much, Wolfgang. I'm glad you mentioned the Holoship initiative because that's our next session with Jennifer. You made the segue easy for me there. Thank you again so much, and we'll speak to you later later on in the panel discussion we have.
Yeah, sorry that we just have so little time here. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so I invite everyone to jump to the next session. You just back out into the lobby area, and you'll be able to join the keynote discussion with Jennifer from C-SPAN. Thanks a lot.